I should have left the restaurant the moment he walked away from the table, phone pressed to his ear, face pale, promising just a minute. But I didn't, because I already knew the truth. Because that night wasn't about romance, it was about ending something that had begun long before this Christmas. The waiter approached, stiff posture, eyes avoiding mine as he slid a folded note beside my plate. 8 words, "Go to the rooftop, you'll understand everything." My pulse didn't rise. I'd been waiting for this moment for months. I met Ethan 2 years ago, in a bookstore where he pretended he wasn't staring at me across the philosophy aisle. He said my silence drew him in. Funny, silence is the very thing he later feared, because it meant I was thinking, watching, calculating. Back then, he felt like winter sunlight, cold but bright enough to make me squint. I mistook that brightness for warmth. I believed him when he said he loved honesty. I believed him when he promised he'd never waste my time. That was the biggest lie of all. The shift came slowly. A late-night message he meant to delete. A perfume on his shirt that didn't belong to me. His sudden protectiveness over his phone, like it held a fragile truth that couldn't survive daylight. I didn't confront him. Confrontation gives people room to lie. Instead, I observed, traced patterns, followed hints. Then I found her name, Clara, buried in an email thread he thought he'd hidden. She called him Love. He replied with plans. Their secret trips, their shared stories, their private jokes. He didn't even bother to change his writing style. Lazy betrayal, the kind that insults more than it hurts. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even leave. I simply began planning. People imagine revenge as fire. Mine was ice, silent, patient, precise. I gathered everything: screenshots, bank transfers, hotel bookings, messages, timelines. Then I studied his weaknesses, his obsession with reputation, his ambition for a promotion, his terror of scandals, his hunger to impress the very people whose respect he didn't deserve. I became a ghost in his routines, deleting nothing, changing nothing, just collecting. When he suggested we take a break, I smiled. He thought it was relief. It was acceptance. And when he insisted we stay friends, I laughed internally. He needed me to stay close enough not to suspect anything was unraveling beneath his feet. 3 months later, I set the trap with the simplest lure: loneliness. I don't want to spend Christmas alone, I told him. He offered to set me up on a blind date. I agreed. He thought he was being generous by handing me off. He had no idea he was placing the knife in my hand. So when the waiter gave me that note, I wasn't surprised. Rooftops are poetic places for endings. The elevator doors opened to cold December air and city lights. And there he stood. Not my date, but Ethan, jaw tight, phone still in his hand, breath forming nervous clouds. "You weren't supposed to see that message," he said. I stepped closer. "Which one?" He swallowed. I watched the panic bloom. He wasn't afraid of losing me. He was afraid of losing everything else. I handed him the folder I'd carried in my coat, thick with evidence. His eyes moved fast, then froze. You tracked me?" "No," I said. "You exposed yourself. I just collected the pieces." He knew what the documents meant. The board at his company would receive them in the morning, sent anonymously, but traceable enough to hurt. His wife, yes, the one he wasn't ready to talk about, would receive the full truth too. And Clara? She'd learn she wasn't the only secret. "You can't do this," he whispered. I already did. His greatest fear wasn't betrayal. It was visibility. Being seen for who he really was. He reached for me, desperate. "We can fix this." I stepped back. "You taught me something valuable, Ethan. People like you don't fear consequences. You fear witnesses." His face cracked. Finally, honestly. As I left him on that rooftop, the cold wrapped around me like clarity. He wasn't worth heartbreak, only closure. Downstairs, the restaurant glowed warm, unaware of the small war that had just ended above it. I walked past the table where my untouched dessert sat and stepped into the night. For the first time in months, I breathed deeply. Revenge wasn't loud. It didn't need fireworks. Sometimes it was a quiet walk out of a place where someone thought they could abandon you, only to realize you were the one leaving them behind. And that was enough.